Last year I've got one of Bachmann US's narrow gauge Talyllyn locomotives, which, while a lovely reskin of their Skarloey tooling, it came up short in other areas. It seemed designed more for N-gauge track than the available Pico 009 set track, had core plastic components where it shouldn't have, and completely lacked any kind of cab detail. The Bachmann US Talyllyn coaches to go with this model have now finally landed, so I was keen to see whether this would be more of the same, using Thomas model toolings to cash in on the demand for Talyllyn railway models. 3 varieties of coaches were announced, numbers 1, 2 and 4, all of which are preserved and running to this day. I ordered these from Rails of Sheffield for £33.50 each, identical in retailer price to the Thomas coaches, but these did sell out on pre-order, so there's definitely appetite for them. So, let's see what turned up. The coaches arrived in the standard Bachmann US box and blister packaging with item numbers 77052 to 4. This seems to be a recycling of the Talyllyn packaging, as the description on the back is not at all tailored to the coaches. A Bachmann Europe sticker has been applied on the back though, indicating that these were not imports. Getting them out of the box, here is how the coaches look side by side with one of the Bachmann Thomas narrow gauge coaches on which they are based. The Thomas coaches are based on the CGI series narrow gauge coaches, which were heavily based on the Talyllyn's real life examples, so the translation is pretty accurate and seamless. The Talyllyn coach has deeper, richer colours and the gloss is slightly toned down, far more appropriate for the wider modelling market than for the Thomas market. There's also neatly applied lining, decals, and the moulded door handles are picked out with paint. Besides that though, the coaches are practically identical in look, construction and design. Here's coaches 1 and 2 together, but one thing I did notice was that the decals were only present on one side. I'm not sure if this is prototypical, but I did expect them to be the same on both sides. In terms of features, everything appears to be moulded. I did take one of the coaches apart to have a peek inside to see if there were any seats for potential passengers, but disappointingly there was nothing. Coaches nowadays, even in 009, all come with some kind of seating internally. This situation does again feel akin to Talyllyn's missing cab detail, and likely won't meet the expectations of a number of modellers who've been looking forward to these. The most interesting coach of the trio is number 4, in real life called Lulu by the Talyllyn volunteers. This uses the tooling of the blue Thomas narrow gauge coaches, with horizontal planking detail on the sides but no intricate lining. The number decal and Talyllyn emblem are included instead of lettered text, and it looks fine from a distance, but it is not of the highest quality close up when compared to what other manufacturers have given us on recent releases. It does, and I'm happy with it, but that's about it. The ends of the coach also feature wider moulded divisions, and the chassis includes additional detail between the wheels which isn't seen on the other coaches. On the scales, each coach comes in at 18 grams, which is heftier than a lot of 4-wheel narrow gauge wagons, but not too heavy so that small 009 trains will struggle with them. The back-to-back wheel gauging comes in at 7.6 to 7.8mm, which is where it should be for 009 and N-gauge track. Together, all 3 of these coaches are once again nicely decorated renditions of the Thomas toolings. Being unpowered and cheaper than Talyllyn, I think these avoid some of the pitfalls that we saw with the locomotive, or at least suffer from them to a lesser degree. They're fine little coaches, as long as they also work fine on the track. Let's head to the layout. All of the coaches are nice and free rolling, though Lulu seems ever so slightly stiffer than the other 2, but not a detrimental amount. Here they are, lined up at the platform, ready for a coupling test. Behind them we have a Pico Glyn Valley tramway coach, the example preserved at the Talyllyn, and also a Bachmann Thomas brake van styled on the Skarloey brake vans, which, like the coaches, are based on the rolling stock at the Talyllyn. Inside the Pico coach, which costs about the same from retailers as the Bachmann coaches, we do get a removable roof and internal seating, which shows up the Bachmann coach's lack of internal detailing quite harshly. At the head of the train, we have none other than Talyllyn, the only suitable choice for testing these coaches. Hopefully there'll be no issues. Talyllyn hasn't coupled. Let's try that one more time. The train has coupled up fine except for that first coach. Given how finicky I know these 009 couplings can be, I'll just do it myself. 2 out of the 3 coaches coupled fine though, which is better than I expected, to be fair. Now let's send the train off and test it over the point work. The train has passed over both sides of the loop without incident, and even Talyllyn seems to be performing better than when I first tested it. That was a success. The coaches also ran fine over the baseboard joins. But as I was filming B-roll for giving my overall opinion, I got a decoupling and a derailment over the level crossing. Still, I got the train back together, but the first coach then derailed again on the next S-bend. And then again on the other S-bend, where Talyllyn dropped the coupling as well. The middle 2 coaches ran fine, so I suspected it might be the loco on the tight bends causing foul play. So I banished Talyllyn to the yard for far too much rock and roll, and switched to my more reliable Festiniog Small England. Let's see if things run any better. Before I could even move the camera, we had another coupling drop, this time with the second coach. Let's try again. There were no problems out of the station. We've cleared the crossing. And the second S-bend. And back into the station. We have finally finished a full lap of the layout. That was quite the performance exercise. That first coach has definitely been the most problematic, but that may be down to the tight Pico Setrak curves. On layouts with more gradual curves, these issues may become irrelevant, but I can't test that. 2 coaches though performed fine for the most part, so it was a bit of a mixed bag overall. On to my final verdict. Decoration. For the prototype, this is a big improvement over the Thomas models. The lining is well applied, gloss dullens down, and decent decals are provided and applied precisely. The colours are subtly different and improved, and a few bits of moulded detail are also picked out appropriately. Overall, I'm happy with the decoration. Details and features. Like Bachmann's first Talyllyn loco, this is rather lacklustre. There is only moulded detail, which is done well enough but not to the top quality seen on other models, and there are no separately fitted features of note. There's no internal seating detail as seen on small, similar coaches from other manufacturers. As such, this gets marked down yet again as not being up to standard in my view. Quality. The model, besides the axles, were all plastic in construction, which is fine for the scale and size of the engines and their motors. There were no obvious quality issues with these. I'll give the coaches the point. Performance. This is where things got sticky. These coaches were all free-rolling, and 2 out of 3 of them coupled fine on the first attempt, which was a decent outcome. They handled the Pico pointwork fine and baseball joins, and then for whatever reason, trouble began. Even when I ruled out my Talyllyn locos faulty-ish running on first radius, coach number 1 still had trouble, derailing and coming uncoupled, sometimes even taking coach number 2 with it. So 2 out of 3 coaches ran without issues, but 1 didn't. That's still a majority positive, but does the 1 dud sink these? I think factoring in the tight curves, this might be a case like the Bachmann Talyllyn where these were developed with N-gauge track as opposed to the Pico 009 set track. As 2 of the trio worked fine, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The performance was pretty good and passable for 2 coaches, but if you've purchased these, be sure to check the running of all of them. And finally, onto price. In the world of the £90 and £100 standard gauge coaches, and larger 009 coaches costing £50 to £60, £33.50 for these at the retailers sounds digestible. The underlying Thomas tooling in this instance is spot on for the prototypes and the materials used, avoiding some of the shortcomings of the Scarloey/Talyllyn Locos Thomas range tooling. Smaller coaches from Pico cost less, and larger ones from Pico and Bachmann cost more. As the smallest 009 coaches Bachmann do, these are rightfully the cheapest. But, as they use existing toolings, could they perhaps have been cheaper? They also lack the internal detailing seen in other small coaches that cost practically the same. There is more intricate lining and decoration, so maybe that's the justification. On balance, these are fine and the costs can be justified and reflected where they exist. Bachmann could have priced these higher than the Thomas versions, but didn't, and I'm happy for that. Taking it all together, I'll award the coaches the price point today for what they currently cost at retailers. So that's a score of 4 out of 5. Making these coaches I can highly recommend. These scored much better than the Bachmann Talyllyn locomotive, but again suffered from some obvious missing detail and, for one coach in particular, spotty performance. On the whole though, they're well decorated, well priced, of decent quality for the scale and fair performers. So what do you think of the Bachmann Talyllyn coaches? I think they're a wonderful addition, even if they don't quite match the best in the game. Thomas editions can also be used to add additional numbers and bulk out the trains without repeating the numbers. So there is a good variety of options open to Talyllyn modelers now. Let's see if more Talyllyn locos follow Sir Hayden. This set of coaches needs a Dolgok and Edward Thomas that have everything modelers have come to expect from the hobby. So hopefully Bachmann are taking the feedback on board. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Take care.